Well, we're talking to Scott Whitaker today. Scott is a jeweler out of Park City, Utah. He's been doing this over 20 years. After getting inspired in high school by a teacher, he picked up the craft and has basically never stopped, and he's turned it into his livelihood and career. And he makes some really beautiful things. Go to his website or his Instagram and you'll see what I mean, but all of his jewelry just screams the American West, and it's rugged and the textures match with the outdoors, and in some cases even the way he makes it is inspired by the outdoors, and you'll see what I mean if you listen to this. But really neat craftsman. Hopefully I can get in his shop and film some of his trade up a little closer, but for now this will have to get us started. Hope you enjoy it. Scott Whitaker with Scott James Jewelry. Well, first of all, thanks for coming on and taking the time. And my first sort of point is, there's so many aspects of the industry as a whole that I don't know about, and I don't expect you to speak for the industry necessarily, but I'd rather kind of talk about the craft and like the nitty gritty. But I feel like we have to also just talk about the industry generally, because I have a friend he sold rings for a while. Most guys, they only kind of interact with it when they're buying an engagement ring or something, and then they're away
Right.
from it. So what's the industry been like? Has it been like upended by people selling stuff online? Is our huge chains just like dominate a lot of it? Are the craftsmen kind of always untouchable because somebody has to, make the products at the end of the day? So it's kind of two separate worlds, or what's the state of the, I don't know, jewelry industry generally, would you say?
Yeah, it's kind of hard for me to speak fully generally because there's so many niches within the market, and we've kind of hit another niche that we've been focusing on this last little while with social media. But previously, I was brick and mortar. This is my I don't know, 21st, 22nd year in the industry,
Mm.
and so did brick and mortar sales and manufacturing for a jewelry store in Park City. And that was kind of, like resort town style sales. And it was a little custom, but, but on the industry as a whole, I feel like even with the way metal prices are and everything is like, I feel like most people are thriving right now, to be honest with you.
Mm.
Online retailers, I think, like specifically people that can tap into that because your market's so huge. But to me and what I see, we sold our brick and mortar store in 2018, and he's doing phenomenal as well, even in that space. And he doesn't do any online work. So,
Wow, interesting. What's that like you mentioned like buying metals and stuff, and I guess compared to a lot of other, I don't know, asset classes, the price of gold and silver has been kind of stable, at least compared to fuel. Or am I looking at that wrong? I'm thinking like the last 10 years, it hasn't changed
no,
a lot. Or does it change like day by day?
in the last 10 years, it's been just to give you like a quick anecdote, like when I started in 99 or 2000, right around there, gold was around $300 an ounce.
Okay.
I think right now, I don't know what today's market is, but it's probably 17 to $1,900 an ounce.
Yeah.
The last 20 years has been crazy, but then there's also been like it's kind of, I mean, I don't know, it follows the stock market and those kind of things. And so like in 2008, when everything crashed, gold and materials just shot through the roof.
Right.
And it's had a few of those ups and downs. Every presidential change, every major kind of economical thing, like gold will follow in a trend, like, and any precious metal,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I guess that's what I'm referring to, because a lot of investment guys, the real, I don't know, worst case scenario oriented ones are like, buy gold, it's going to go through the roof. But,
yeah,
and I know it's gone up, but at the same
yeah,
time, it's still, like you said, $1,700. It's like,
yeah.
it's not $10,000 or some like crazy number.
No, through the roof is relative for
Yeah.
sure. For us, like, 5%, 10% matters when we're
Yeah.
working with wholesale numbers and dealing with deliverables that are 3 months out. Those kind of percentages are a big deal. Like when your margins aren't like
Sure.
mine.
So
So
do you take the risk, or do you just tell people that it'll be this price plus spot gold, or how does that work if someone's making a big order of that includes a lot of material?
It's actually, yeah, I, our vendors are pretty like nice to us, and so we can adjust pricing, but it's pretty much like you put the price together, and it's that price until you come back and like make any adjustments. So yeah, you eat it. If it's 3 months out and there's a big dip or
Huh.
rise,
Yeah. Um, about like more like the craft itself. I know like certainly over centuries and even decades, but you can sort of like see styles change and come and go. What's that like from your point of view? When you started, were you making a lot of one type of thing because it was selling a lot? And if so, what's kind of in style, or how do these trends in jewelry go? Or is it all pretty timeless and it's like, a gold ring has been 10,000 years, on trend. So what's that like?
yeah, I kind of feel like jewelry specifically is it's always like like yes, there can be styles within there, but um but like you said, like you can go look at 1,000-year-old ring that people will still be rocking today.
Mhm.
And it's so personal, and that's what's so rad about the industry to me is that everyone, and which is crazy too, because it is so personal, and what that's let people do now um, is with like manufacturing and creating jewelry, like with social media, it's so easy for people to get into the industry with their own little style or their own way of fabricating or building jewelry and get it seen by people. So I would say like in general, I feel like, there's ebbs and flows like with style, and the big like, the big industry people, the large brick and mortars are pushing a narrative that you'll see within commercials and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But it's different now because who watches commercials, and you
Mhm.
know, social media driven like so heavily, like with Instagram and TikTok, and um,
Yeah.
whether it's influencers or what do they call them now? Not influencers, but affiliates. Like however you're doing, you're seeing product out there. It's so driven via social media, and anyone gets to play that game if you want to.
Yeah. I love going on Etsy and just seeing what I look at that as like the common man. Like what are
Yeah,
like the it's kids, sure, but it's just what are people making that's cutting edge? And very often I'm impressed and kind of inspired by the things that are on there.
I'm always blown away by the craftsmanship and ingenuity of people. Um, like one new thing that's come online in the last like 10 years or so is like metal clay. And so you
Oh.
can like regular ceramics, but you work it and then you fire it, and the chemical formula of the clay like turns into metal, like just solid
Whoa.
metal. Yeah. So you're working with like this metal clay, and it's crazy to see how creative people are, because you can do that in like, like a little, I mean, a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad or anyone like can do this in a very small environment and make some pretty rad things.
What kind of metal does it turn into? That's like it can't be
Silver, gold, bronze. Let me see if I have a sample here.
I'm
So,
thinking I don't know much about like chemistry, but it's like
yeah,
people are turning clay into
yeah, it's
what
PM
in the
clay, and so this is a 0.925 material, silver clay. There's around, a lot of times it depends on the clay. Some make it differently, but there's around a 15% shrinkage. But
oh.
you can kiln fire it or you can torch fire it, and it's straight up metal when you're done. It's like alchemy. It's crazy. It's
So
weird.
the metal must be inside the clay
Yeah.
already, and then you're just burning out the malleable
Yep.
clay part, I guess.
Exactly. And you can like under fire and do things, and it's gonna crack and not be like very sound structurally. But if you do it right, it's like most people wouldn't be able to tell the difference, at all.
So what's your favorite type of I don't know jewelry to make, or what are you like getting excited? I mean, you've been doing it 20 years, so I'm sure you've done it all. I'm sure some of it is just kind of routine, pay the bills, and other stuff you're probably like, this is I really like these kind of projects. So what are you getting excited about these days, or is it all work?
Yeah, it's a mixture. Everyone asks that. They'll come into the studio and see the toys, the tools,
Yeah.
and be like, oh, I can't believe you just get to make stuff all day,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you know how that is. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, like even when you love something, when it turns into a career and a job, like it gets difficult at times. But that being said, we do feel super lucky to have the opportunity to like work with our daily basis and use our
Mhm.
creativity. And so I do a lot of lost wax casting. So we'll fabricate a piece, make a master mold, and then we'll replicate that piece via lost wax casting. We do a lot of that. But ever since we sold our brick and mortar store in 2018, we kind of like turned to the social media world. We dabbled in it a little bit before, but not like we do now. And so the outdoors is a big part of like my family's life, like my wife and my kids. We're always looking for an adventure to go exploring somewhere. And so we incorporate a lot of that into what we make, whether it's, water, trees, mountains, and all the way from like sterling silver goods up to bridal. We'll
Mm.
put, our little flair and touch of the outdoors in what we make. And that's kind of been a theme for the last little while. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm making something with a mountain again, like
Yeah.
you on that road of like, is this really what I'm doing? But it always like seems to like circle back around in a theme of some sort. And we get creative. I'm doing a project right now that's pretty fun. That's it's all found. The metal's not found material, but what I'm putting into the pieces is found. The rocks, or whether it's a tree branch that I find, and I'll mold that and cast it in silver. And then I have a tumbler that I'm building that I'm actually making like a 5-gallon barrel tumbler, but I'm going to use the river to turn the tumbler.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
And
Cool.
I'll use the media. The media inside the tumbler is just going to be rocks and sand from the riverbank,
Yeah.
and it'll turn the metal, and whatever we get off of that will be what we deliver. So it'll be kind of like river earth tumbled jewelry. Yeah.
That's cool. Wow. So this is just occurring to me, but this must be one of a question you get all the time. Will people bring you jewelry that maybe it was like their grandma's and it's pretty out of style or not their particular style, and have you melt it down and remake it into something? Because for some reason, all of a sudden that just hit me when you're talking, like what a great way to repurpose and bring to life like the same element, kind of like you said, using the river power or these other things, and give them
Yeah,
totally new life without just leaving it in a jewelry box for 80 more years.
exactly. Yeah. So, we did that a lot more when we had a brick and mortar store, and we're kind of like 9 to 5
Mm-hmm.
servicing customers in that format. I get hit up a lot to do that kind of work, but one of the things that I've had to learn the most in this industry is like how to say no. Like,
Yeah.
it's so, because those sentimental jobs are so beautiful too. Like there's a lot of meaning behind that, and recycling or turning something old, that has so much sentimental value into something new that someone wears is a beautiful story. And we have done it for customers for sure. We don't do it super often though, anymore, but I have friends that do it if people need it. So
Yeah, there's probably some risk that comes along with it, because if it doesn't go quite right, you've like torched the ring, and it's a one-way road.
exactly. That's definitely like my one place that I worked at. My old boss from years and years ago shattered someone's emerald, like a
Oh,
fan,
wow.
like those kind of things definitely happen, and it's not fun. And hopefully you have insurance like to
Yeah.
cover some of those things. But also being in the brick and mortar world for so long, we, get a little bit of burnout with that kind
Yeah.
of, and we've been able to hone our craft a little bit more to like just make what we want to make, and it's been
Yeah.
good that.
So can you tell us, I should have started here, but how you first got involved in this craft and making jewelry, and what it was that kind of led you down this road to begin with?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think early on, working with my hands in some form, that was something I always did. But it was like, macrame, like tying some hemp necklaces, or,
Uh-huh.
or beading some stuff. But when I got into high school, I had an amazing teacher, Sue Villela. She's passed now, but she was a beautiful soul and an amazing teacher. And so she taught multimedia, like 3D design, and then metalsmithing and ceramics. But she was as much an artist as she was a teacher. And I think she has like 4 to 5 professional jewelers like under her like stewardship as being a teacher there, which is pretty cool. And so that's where I got into more of the metalsmithing and the crafting of metals. And then when I was going to college, I worked at a store in Park City that's no longer there. It's called Tommyknockers, and they were like a small little mom and pop custom craft store where they did a little bit of wholesale. They dabbled in wholesale of their own designs, but that's kind of where I learned a lot of the trade professionally.
Wow. And then more or less after picking up the trade skills, I guess at some point you opened the brick and mortar store, but it just kind of turned into a career, I guess. And was that intentional, or is that just kind of how it unrolled?
Yeah, that's kind of just how it unfolded. I went to college all through working, and which took me forever because I started a family, decided to try and build a house. It got crazy for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So college took a while. Like it took me a few years to finish. But while I was going to college, I got my degree in technology management and business management. And it was either like when I got done, I was like, okay, we're either making a break from this jewelry thing or we're going all in. And we decided to go all in. And we purchased the kind of like a even smaller version of what Tommyknockers was in Heber. We purchased a gentleman's inventory and took over his lease. And then we kind of stepped into like and this was like, you're changing watch batteries for $5 and you're, you know what I mean? Like you're doing everything you can to make it work. This is a small town that we did this in, back in 2006. And it was right before the crash. And so we bought, and, people had boats in their yard. They had like, 4-wheelers everywhere. People were just spending money like crazy in 2006. And then it slowly crept into to the crash. And we were like, oh man, this is gonna be rough. Like this industry is not where you want to be for this big of a downturn. So it was kind of wild. We had to get creative on some avenues on how to make some money, like not just in the brick and mortar store. We bought a lot of gold. I don't know if you remember that time frame, but like gold buying places popped up.
Yeah, everywhere. We buy gold. Yep.
Yeah, everywhere. And we jumped on that train because everyone was doing it. But honestly, it was helpful. Like, and not just for us, but for the customers coming. Like there was people that like, took that route to make money and to get rid of some of their goodies.
So was that big right then? Because people, lost their job and they needed to just like raise some cash, and the jewelers happened to be equipped to judge how much it was worth and et cetera. Is that sort of what was going on there?
Yeah, totally. And it's mandated from the state. Like it's almost like you could call it like kind of like pawn shop almost esque in how it's regulated through the state. You need to have your own license to do it. And then, and then they come around and check your scales, make sure everything's good to go, and do all that. But yeah, like there was a lot of people that came in, like, for gas money and grocery money for sure.
Yeah, because it'd be pretty easy to take advantage of those people, and you could just tell, oh, that's fake gold. That's not even real gold. Then I'll give you $10. And you could really hurt them.
For sure. That had to happen to people. But there's a bunch of rules. You're supposed to hold on to the metal for X amount of days before you melt, all these things. But, we had to, we had the cops come in a few times, like, because people stole stuff and tried to sell or like go that whole route. It was kind of crazy.
You mentioned that the mountains and these nature things, and I got to mention that even though for you it's probably just Wednesday and just another thing, but for people like me who don't see this very often, I got to just have you explain it because it's really neat. You're making castings. I assume they start with wax, topographic mountains and canyons and ranges and such, and putting them into certainly bracelets and necklaces and stuff. Can you maybe, I don't know if how that started or how you got into that, but they're really beautiful and really neat. Can you talk about how you kind of got onto that tact and a little bit about how that's done?
Sure. So I don't know what year I started doing CAD CAM work, but that was part of what I did for part of my degree was like integrating business and technology. And one of my ideas back then was, integrating CAD CAM, which was kind of like just starting in the industry back in like 2000 and maybe 2003 or 2000, sometime early 2000s. It was kind of just starting in the brick and mortar store. Like, I think larger industries had already had it going for a while, but it was getting like cost effective enough for small stores to be able to get in on it.
Hmm.
And so I got in on it relatively early doing some CAD CAM work. And when we bought our new store, we ended up buying a 3D printer, and it just got all of our wheels turning on like, okay, what can this thing actually do? Like what can print that we can, turn into jewelry? And having the mountains be part of what we love, like we got the idea to dabble with the topography. And it's crazy now because there's a lot of people doing it now as prices come down with printers. And that's one downfall, I guess, of social media is how easy it is to knock someone off.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I don't know if we were the first, but I did as much research as I possibly could, and
Yeah.
we did not see topography jewelry out there. This was like 2015, and we haven't hit it super hard. But that being said, that's a whole nother story. The 3D printing is kind of what got us into it, and what you can do with CAD CAM and like getting these maps and being able to like put them into the jewelry. It's pretty awesome. You've probably seen a few different things that we've made, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Uh,
Like all of them, I've never seen one up close, but they're just beautiful. You just stare at them. And I'm sure if it's a mountain that you climbed yourself a few times, it could be really meaningful to see
yeah,
the little saddles and draws that you've
yeah,
spent time in. I got to imagine that just could really draw a person in.
yeah. We've done a lot of, from people's grandparents' cabin up in the mountains of Colorado to where they
Huh.
got where they eloped and got married. All of these really fun special locations. It's been cool for sure, and it's cool to hear the stories behind
Yeah.
that the piece that they're getting to.
You'll have orders for just like a custom piece of the earth that you've never cast
Yeah,
or made before. Like, hey, I got engaged on this river bend on this river here. Can you cast that out? And you're able
yeah,
to somehow rebuild that?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've got a little
Huh.
program that we do our CAD CAM work in, and printing, and the technology's gotten so great too that you can cast directly off of a print. We do a lot of fabrication work too. Like we're not just like a print shop, because there are those out there, but
Mm-hmm.
uh, but then what we do too is like incorporating some other earth like oriented stuff in there, whether it's a tree branch or you know
Mm-hmm.
some different things from those areas. We can incorporate that as well, so it's pretty fun for sure.
Yeah, that's really something. Um, oh, about social media, you mentioned it is a downside. People can see your work and knock it off, but at the
Yeah,
same time, and that's why I think you're pretty smart to be involved with it. Nobody can be you and like have your story and like for
yeah,
example, when you hire a craftsman to make something custom, half of it is the product you receive. The other half of it is just the story of who made it and how you cross paths with that person. I think that there's some social media is great in that way where you can actually be a little more attached to the person making some of these custom things. And I know for a lot of things I purchased, that's half of it. Just who's this from, what are they all about, and if it's something that I don't know that I'm excited about, then that's incentive to pay more for for that version than maybe one that's similar but not from the same you know story. If that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I think it's so true, and it's kind of like, you know, because I know so many people that look at social media in a glass half empty way, you know, but I take your approach way more often than not. And it's glass half full, you know, like there's so many good things if you want to find it and look for it that's out
Yeah.
there. Like yeah, it's definitely a plus for sure. And it's a huge part of actually how we even get seen, you know, like in the industry is
Mhm.
now Instagram specifically is what we focus on, just only because that's all I know. I'm not really good at other formats.
Hmm. Instagram's great because you don't have to go home to your computer and edit and like redo it all. You can kind of shoot it, film it, or take a picture, post it all just from your phone, and then go back about your life. So I agree. It's definitely the most I don't know, doable for unless you want
Yeah.
to get all crazy and like what we did, which takes a lot more effort.
Oh
Um,
man. Yeah.
so a couple of questions just about jewelry. Are there I'll say cultures, but are there places in the world or cultures around jewelry that you find like really fascinating? Maybe the craftsmanship or the way they use materials that are really interesting. Can't even think of any examples, but you know, like certainly you see it with ancient cultures like Egyptians. You see
Mhm.
pictures or examples of the jewelry they're doing, and it's like, wow, that's really neat. Is there anything that really stands out to you that you enjoy or you can appreciate as someone who's involved with it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few for sure. You know, Native American stamp work is really beautiful. Like, and it's hard. Like people like like you'll see them make it, and you know, it's all fabricated. They're hand making their own stamps, and
I'm not really familiar with it. Can you describe
oh,
what
I
exactly that is?
wish I had something here. Oh, I do. Let me just see if this works.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, you won't be able to see it obviously, but this is a stamp made by a native artist
Oh,
in Arizona.
is that steel or iron or something? What is that?
Yeah, yeah, this is just steel rebar,
Okay.
and then they'll rework the rebar and cut their own shape into it. And this is pretty old. I don't actually know how old the original are, but whenever you know they were able to get their hands on this kind of metal,
Yeah.
uh, and so, anyways, they will do some very very ornate um, stamp work in you know in all kinds of bracelets and
Huh.
pendants and different pieces, but it's really beautiful. And it definitely takes like when you see like how they're lining it up and doing it by hand, it
Huh.
takes skill, especially to push. They're doing like 0 gauge sometimes or 2 gauge, you know, so it's thick
Oh,
metal.
wow.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
thick metal, and they're bending it and you know doing these beautiful these stampings in it. And so I really enjoy that. There's actually a class that I've thought about taking up for a while down in Arizona from a
Huh.
friend. Yeah, because it's a cool process for sure. And it's but it's simple too. A hammer, a tool, and the metal. That,
Yeah.
that that's all you need, you know, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm sure you know, stamping into leather is people have seen that, and I'm always amazed when I see someone carve leather. I guess is how they might call that. But
Yeah.
you see the stamp, and you kind of understand the shape that's in it, and you kind of make an assumption about what it can do. But then you see when it's laid out over like you know, a little space, and it's like got all this depth, and it's almost you look back at the stamp again and you're like, what,
Yes.
how is that possible? I've seen that with
Yeah.
our leather guy. He'll carve leather and it just looks like it's like this woven, like textured like fabric with depth, and it's just this little stamp. It's kind of mind-blowing, honestly.
Exactly, and it's very similar to what you're describing, you know, like you can move leather around a little bit differently than metal, but that kind of like embossed or 3D-ish texture that you get on the leather is similar to what the metal produces. So it's pretty cool. That and one other style is the in lapidary inlay that a lot of I can't oh I wish I could remember what native tribe does it predominantly, but it's really beautiful ornate inlay of stones that's
Oh.
just like micro inlay polished stones. Yeah, it's really cool.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you wonder how that like how those skills got developed in some of those tribes. I mean, developing that type of talent, not just the talent, but even the technology of how to do that is,
Yeah.
it's kind of a shame that there's not more. Maybe there's a good record, I don't know, but you just
Yeah.
wonder how, whatever, maybe 100 years ago, how it was that somebody spent the time it takes to develop that.
Yeah. True craftsman for sure.
Hey, tell me about your shop, because that looks like a real log cabin wall behind you. Is that, what's
Yeah,
going on? That looks kind of old.
it is old. So there was an old hay barn in the town next door in Heber that we restored. So we took it down. It was in the early 1900s or late 1800s. I can't remember. An old hay barn, and we took it down log by log, brought it over here, and had it rebuilt. So the inner structure here is an old log cabin, and then we built wings around it.
Oh, wow.
I'm in a really small studio space right now. I'm so cramped, but it's still enough. So
Oh, that's cool. So the bones are actually pretty old then, or at least that part of the
yeah,
structure is.
yeah, it's pretty cool. It's got a cool feeling for sure. We call it the cabin, and so
Yeah.
it's a good spot to make in for sure.
Maybe my last question for you. Even not even I, but myself included, have from time to time wanted to make a piece of jewelry just for like the heirloom aspect or for a gift, just for the aspect that is something you can give somebody that you made. When someone asks for tips or where should they start if they want to do that and have reasonable success for something they could be proud of, where do you point people to as something with, minimal tools, to if someone's kind of, I don't know, has more than the average interest in making jewelry with, their hands, with basic shop skills? Where do you point them?
I usually when people are of that nature, I usually point them just into the fabrication realm. You can get a cheap frame saw, um, a rawhide mallet, and you don't even need like a full ring mandrel. You can use like a wood dowel. You can use, I mean, if you want to get creative, but
Mm-hmm.
but for if you want to do it seriously, for a couple $100, you can have enough tools to make some amazing jewelry.
Huh.
Yeah, and it's not hard, with like with YouTube and like
Yeah.
the tutorials that are out there, and you guys are so much in that space. It's so easy to go watch a few videos and feel fairly comfortable, they have these, I don't think I have one here, that it's almost like a little clicker torch that you put butane in.
Yeah.
That can get hot enough to do a little solder job on a ring, no problem.
Yeah. Like a plumbing torch, like something a plumber would use to.
Yeah, or that for sure. And so, yeah, I've turned a lot of people on, but there's also some good people out there. There's a group on Instagram called Metalsmith Society, and it's
Oh.
run by my friend Corky, and she has created. I mean, she's built this thing into, like, I don't know, I think there's like 150,000 followers in a couple years, but the information she's put together is just incredible, from how-to videos to tools to equipment needed, like all sorts of stuff she's put together on there, and it's pretty awesome. So there's a lot of information out there to get people started, but I think fabricating is like a really easy way. And like I was saying about the stamping, like that doesn't even require a torch unless you
Mm-hmm.
anneal your metal and soften it back up if you're stamping it that much. But you don't have to. Like, you can do more simple designs that you can order annealed metal and pretty much have a stamp and a hammer and a mandrel, and you're good to go.
Wow. Oh, that's pretty cool. Like you said, in this day and age, if someone wants to get involved with something, it's probably never been easier than it is right now to pick it up, huh? One of these days, have you taught classes? Have you kind of had students ever and taken people, beginners, and showed them some of these things, or are you just your own kind of employees and the people you train up?
Yeah, we've had a lot of requests for that, and we've thought about doing like some online tutorials that
Yeah.
can kind of, live online in perpetuity, which would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But we've never gone down that road. It's only been training in-house employees so far.
Yeah.
Never know. A lot more of those little jewelry schools are popping up these days, because so many people do want to get into the industry. I mean, I know more jewelers like that work out of their kitchen and small little studios than I ever have before. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, Scott. Well, we'll link to your Instagram. That's going to be the best place for people to see the work. And I know your website's really well developed also. So if someone has the topographic jewelry, and I'm not sure if that's the name, to me is really the thing that just is, you got to see it. So people click and check that out. Is the website the place to go for people who are, want more information about how that's done and talking about specific, parts of the earth and what you could do with those locations?
Yeah, website's definitely the best way to get a hold of us, or contact us. Email is on there, and then Instagram for sure for visuals. That's where we do a lot of like even fun stories about finding a rock or whatever and polishing it, and you get to see that process on the stories and stuff like that. So both of them great places to see what we do for sure.
My final question for you, and you mentioned finding a rock. Geology and jewelry are kind of like, sister. they're not related, but they're more related than you think. And it's always impressive when people uncover things just out in the earth. Have you found some cool stones and gems, and ever taken your jewelry in that direction of, I don't even know about taking it, but finding the material or geodes and turning them into stuff?
For sure. And that kind of goes back to that. I think we talked about at the beginning, is like, I have this new series that I haven't fully got off the ground yet, but it actually is just called Found. And so, or maybe it's something like that. I can't remember. I labeled it on an Instagram post, but we do zones that we go to on a regular basis. This is one you probably can't see. You might be able to see a little bit, but this is a place we go to in the Wasatch Mountains, and it's a mixture of epidote and pyrite and a bunch of different minerals, but if you see me on a trail, I'm looking down. That's just how it's going to be. Or if I'm at the water at the river, I'm trying to look for agates or different pieces. So we have a lot of pieces that we find them, we cut them, we do the lapidary work and set them in our own settings. So
it's funny how good kids are at that. Like on one hand, I'm always annoyed my kids, their pockets are full of rocks like all the time. And I'm like, why are you doing that? But then sometimes, in fact, recently we were gone and my oldest Leo, he found this rock. It's like a geode, and it's amazing. It's just like this massive geode. I don't even know. It's just like the crystally looking stones inside of it. And even I was freaking out. And so it's kind of funny how these kids have the same instinct that's like, this is cool, and I got to look at it and be like, it is actually pretty cool to look for rocks.
That's so funny. I'm going to have you talk to my wife, because I've got rocks at my house. Wondering what we're doing, but I just tell my kids it's their inheritance, and we're good.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Scott. Well, hey, thanks for coming on. We'll link to all this, including your Instagram. And if people want to get in touch, I'm sure they will. And someday, if we're out there, I'd love to get a closer look at your shop. It looks really interesting, and maybe there'd be some part of this we could put a camera on and give people a better visual for, I don't know, how some of these castings work, or who knows. It's neat seeing these things come to life.
Yeah, it'd be fun to have you out.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks for joining us. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah.